Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we're going to be trying to repair this vintage 1974 Action Man helicopter. Now this was very kindly sent in to me by Darren the Toy Boy. You can see the unboxing of this over on my second channel, toy-polloi 2. So if you want to see that, I'll put a link to it in the description. As you can see, he sent me what is the remains of quite a battered vintage Action Man helicopter, and it's really one of those projects I have no idea if I can actually get this together. I think I can. There's most of the parts here, and I've been buying a few bits off eBay, which I'm hoping will arrive while I'm filming. So I think there is going to be enough here to get it working. But really, I just want to get started on it and see how far I can get. As you can see, it's in pieces at the moment. Let's take a closer look at every bit that's broken and what needs fixing, and then we can get to cleaning and start to repair it.
Action Man
and his transport command. Tough, realistic models specially designed for Action Man. They're all action. Just look for the Action Man Transport Command badge. It tells you they're the real thing. You can send off for a free workshop accessories kit by collecting the stars with every pack.
Action Man
Transport Command.
So this is the vintage 1974 Action Man helicopter, and it's made of a plastic that at the time would have been quite sturdy, but over the years it tends to get quite brittle, so lots of the pieces are broken and we're going to have to repair quite a lot of them. You can see here this is the rear sort of tail part, and it's quite badly damaged here. There's actually a whole bit missing. This is the bit that connects it to the main part of the helicopter. That I think I can rebuild. I can make something out of styrene that will do the job, and I think I can get it to match quite nicely, so that bit I'm not too worried about. Here we have the sort of rear part of this connects onto here. That again isn't too badly damaged. It's snapped here, and at some point someone's tried to glue it, but a little bit of plastic weld on that and a tidy up and that will be fine. It does have a couple of little fins that go across here which are in this bag. They are damaged. The middle part of that sort of attaches in that little section there is missing completely, but I think we can make something from scratch. So again, I'm not too worried about those pieces. They are easy to repair. This part is going to be quite complicated. This is the sort of landing gear for the whole of the helicopter, and as you can see it's in rather a sorry state. I have some of the pieces for this. You can see there's a bar here that is snapped off. That is in here, so that I reckon we can just plastic weld back on. I've also been sent the front prongs that should go on here, but these are from a different version of the toy. You can see the colour of the plastic is slightly different, so I'm going to have to make some modifications. It's not a clean brake. If they were a clean brake you could probably just attach them straight on, but they're not, so I'm going to have to tidy those up and then reinforce them. It's also supposed to have bits sort of sticking out the back here which are completely missing, so I've ordered some styrene rod which is this thick. I've never used stuff that is this thick, so I've ordered some and I can make something out of that, so that should be fixable. Then we come on to things like the propeller blades. These are quite bowed and bent. In fact that one here is very bowed and bent, so that will need fixing. Inside the helicopter, if I just rearrange the guys at the back, there is a bit of damage, but I'm just going to sort of ignore that. This is where the control stick attaches. It's supposed to slide in. It just sort of slides in place. I don't think those will really matter that much. I think it should still work, so I may just leave that. But otherwise everything really just needs a good clean and a tidy up. I think the mechanisms work on this. If I just do that, oh, that's not too bad. It is working. Maybe a bit of lubricant on that just to help that along, but I think that is working partially. Oh yeah, it is working. Just needs a little bit of lubrication in that, and I think that will work quite nicely. So you can see there's a lot to do. It's a lot of fabrication and repairing parts. This plastic does tend to go very brittle over time, so I'm hoping there's still enough flex in this that we can put this thing together, because you have to bend these prongs out a bit to get them onto the sort of main body section of the vehicle. So hopefully if I mend it we can actually still put it together. I can also see there the end of that blade is missing, so I might have to quickly go on eBay and see if someone's selling a replacement blade or someone's got a spare that I can buy off them. So I'll see if I can find that. First thing though, let's give this a good clean, and then we can start seeing if it's possible to sort of repair all of this from scratch. I think it's going to be a lot of scratch building of pieces, but I think it's possible. So let's give this a good clean. I'm going to use hot soapy water. The bits that are just plastic I can dunk in the water. Anything with stickers on I'll be a bit more careful. I don't want to damage these stickers. The stickers are in reasonable condition, so I'm just going to leave them as is, and they're sort of applied by a child, so they're not quite in the right places. But yeah, let's give everything a careful wash and then we can start the process of rebuilding it. Now everything's clean, I can start to get to work reconstructing this, and I'm going to start with the tail section because I think that's going to be, I'm not going to say the easiest bit, but it should be quite doable. You can see here that there's a big chunk of this missing. This connects to the back portion of the main helicopter body and just clips in place. So I need to recreate this missing piece. It sort of holds on at the moment, but without that missing piece it's very loose, and I don't think you would be able to play with this at all. It would certainly fall off. So my plan is to recreate that just using some 2mm styrene sheet. I've got lots of offcuts of styrene. I keep all the offcuts when I'm making things, and there's plenty in there, little pieces like this that I can sort of rebuild parts of it with, and I think it shouldn't be too hard to do. This section here is actually 3mm thick and this section is 2mm, so I'm going to layer up some styrene. I also have some 1mm styrene sheet here, so if I stick those two pieces together using plastic weld, I'll have the 3mm I need. And yeah, really I'm just going to sort of make it up as I go along. I can see that I've got little bits that I need to make. I'll probably start with this side and fix that up, and I'll see if I can get the hole as close as possible on that one, and then I can start building this section. If it's too weak, luckily this portion here, when you attach it, isn't really key, so I can sort of thicken that piece up. I could put an extra supporting piece across there. Likewise, this section here doesn't need to be this thin, so I can put some extra support on that side and on this side where it's broken. So yeah, I'm really just going to sort of get going and see what I can make. It will be styrene sheet, plastic weld, plastic nippers and all sorts of cutters and files and that, and just see what I can shape. So I would say wish me luck, because I'm not really sure if this will work. I have a feeling it will, but I've never done this before, so yeah, let's just get constructing. And this is what I've managed to make. As you can see, I've got it pretty close to the original shape. I did add some sort of extra support on the back here. When I first put it together, it just felt too weak because quite a lot of pressure gets put on this plate. So an extra bit of reinforcement there. That's just some 1mm styrene across the back. And everything else is feeling really quite good. You can see I've even managed to match up that hole, not too bad. At the moment, it is still that black styrene. Towards the end of this project, I will paint all of the bits I'm making, but I've got quite a few pieces to make, so there's no point in painting this one on its own. Really though, we've got to test it on the back of the helicopter, so let's see if this fits. It should just clip on there like that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that is really not too bad at all. It felt like it clipped on quite nicely, and it's certainly a lot firmer now. I would say it's going to hold really quite nicely. That's a pretty good fit overall. I wonder if we can actually take this off. Let's see if we can remove that as well, because that's obviously the other thing that you'll need to do with this helicopter. Oh yeah, you can remove it. Doesn't look like anything has broken on there. So yeah, that I'm quite happy with. It's a fairly fiddly area to make just because of all these details, and I can certainly see why this is so weak. Adding all of these holes has really made this surface quite a weak surface. I guess at the time this plastic had a little bit more give to it, but now it's 40 odd years old, almost 50 years old. It's got quite brittle, so yeah, having those holes is going to be always going to be an issue. There's not a lot you can do to fill those in. Anyway, that I'm happy with. I'm going to move on now to this little tail section, which again is just going to be a bit of plastic weld. So while I've got the plastic weld out, I'm going to reattach those two. It's been glued at some point, so I just need to sand off some of the glue so that the surface is back to being the original plastic, and then a tiny bit of plastic weld on that, and that will be fixed. Then we've got the more complicated problem of these little tail fins. So yeah, let me plastic weld that, and then we'll start looking at these tail fins. Now we come on to these tail fins, and I'm not quite sure what the middle bit is supposed to look like. I've had a quick look online and found a few photos, and it's not particularly clear. All I do know is they're supposed to be angled like that. So if this is the tail fin here, they need to sort of angle slightly upwards, and then there's a pivot point here in the middle. You can see there's a little hole there. I just happen to have some styrene rod. This is 3.2mm styrene rod that fits in there, so I can use that to make that part of it, and it is just about big enough that I can squeeze it out. You're supposed to sort of pop this in rather than thread it through, so we should put this here and then sort of click it in place, and that does click. So I'm going to be using that as this sort of central axis, and then I've got to make something for these to fit onto, and I've got this piece of plastic tubing which I've shown many times on my channel. This came in some shoes that Mrs. Toy-polloi bought. It was used as a shoehorn. I've kept loads of them and used them on various projects over the years, but you can see it's got a hole in the middle which just about fits that piece of styrene. So I'm thinking if I cut off a small section of that and then cut an angle into it, that I can then insert these fins into, do that for either side, I should be able to make something that sort of does the job. I'm never going to get anything that looks like the original one just because these pieces are completely broken and that part is missing. But I'm going to get something that does the job and actually works, and I think at this stage and for this project that is all I need, something that works. Again, I will be painting this at the end, so even though these pieces are white it doesn't matter, and really I've just got to sort of get on with building it. Much like I did this, I'm just going to see what I can make and see if I can make something that works. Okay, so this is my prototype. I've stuck a piece of this shoehorn plastic onto the end of a bit of that 3.2mm styrene rod, and then I've cut a groove into it just using my razor saw here, which cuts quite fine lines and is fairly controllable. So I've done 2 of those, and then I've filed that out just using a needle file. So I've got a groove there that this fin should fit in just about. It's hopefully going to be a little bit of a tight fit, which is not too bad, and you can see it's got a nice up angle on it, and that's going to hold it in place quite reasonably. By the time that's all painted up, I think that will work reasonably well. What I've got to do now though is obviously replicate it on the other side and get the angle the same, which is going to be the sort of the tricky part of this. But overall, I'm actually pretty happy with how that's looking. It's never going to be a perfect sort of replacement to the original, but it will do the job, and yeah, I think that's going to work quite nicely. So let me see if I can actually replicate this on the other side, and yeah, then we can stick these fins in. I'm not going to stick these fins in until I've got both sides made, because if it goes wrong, I'll obviously have to start again. But I think, yeah, I feel quite confident that this is going to work. Well, this is going a whole lot better than I'd expected. You can see here, this is what I've made. So I've got the angles pretty similar. It took a little bit of modifying to make those work, and I've just slotted in the 2 tail fins, and you can see they hold up quite nicely. So I'm now happy enough with this that I'm actually going to glue everything together. I would normally use plastic weld, as I've shown you, but I'm actually not convinced that these little bits of plastic that I'm using, as sort of offcuts, are any good. They don't seem to want to fuse particularly well with the styrene rod in the middle, so I've ended up super gluing them. So what I'm going to do is actually super glue these fins on, and then use some baking soda here to sort of super glue it. If you mix baking soda with super glue, it goes rock hard, and I've got a few gaps where I've not managed to cut it as neat as I had sort of hoped to. So if I super glue these in place and then use the baking soda to build that up, I can sort of file it down and just sort of fill in all of those little holes and little gaps, and it will make a really firm bond. And then again, by the time this is all painted, no one's going to know, but I'm very happy with how that looks. If I bring in the tail fin, wherever I put that, it's over there, I can show you that that slots in there, and that's going to fit really nicely. And yeah, as I say, by the time that's painted, I don't think you'll even notice. So yeah, I'm happy with that. Let's get these properly glued in place, and then we can move on to the next part of the project. And there you go, so I've built that up just using a little bit of super glue. I've been using a pin that I have stuck in an old paintbrush to very carefully put the super glue on. You can use capillary action to sort of pull it into the voids, and then I've used the baking soda to just sort of make it go rock solid, and then a little bit of filing, and I've got something that feels really very strong. So we can now test this into the back part of the helicopter. I'm not going to push this in fully because I think it's going to be a fairly tight fit, and once it's in, it's going to be awkward to get out, so I won't do that until I've finally painted it. But you can see that fits quite nicely, and it is going to work really well. I'm very happy with how that's turned out. So that's the tail part of this helicopter all fixed up now. So now I can attach this tail section to the rear part of the helicopter, and you can see that we've got that all fits, and the tail section with the little tail fins on really fits as well. I'm feeling quite positive about this restoration. It's starting to come together. I thought I'd have a lot more trouble repairing things like that, but it's actually working quite nicely. Now there's one more section on the back of this helicopter that I need to fix, which is the hook. You can see here there's a little winch mechanism and a hook that's supposed to hang down. At some point that's obviously been lost, and it's been replaced by the key from a corned beef tin. I would say that looks like definitely it's a key from a can of some sort. So we need to find a replacement for that, and it just so happens that a while back I was sent a package by Matt Squatch Customs, who makes all sorts of custom and reproduction parts for various toys, and in that happened to be this hook, which is the G.I. Joe hook, but it's exactly the same as the Action Man one here in the UK. So I've just got to replace this old corned beef tin key with the proper hook, and I should be fairly straightforward to do. I'm going to use it again. My little pin is coming in very handy, and I should be able to undo this tiny knot on here. Just if I can get that pin in there, I should be able to loosen up the string, and we can replace that easy enough. There we go, that's that undone. Is it double knotted? It's double knotted, so let's undo that second one. But it's really quite straightforward to do with a pin. There we go. So yeah, let's put on this reproduction one. I'll put a link to Matt Squatch Customs Facebook page in the description of this video, because as I say, he's done some really useful stuff, and this was very useful. I was going to sort of have to hunt one down, then I realised I'd actually already got the piece that I needed for this project. Just like that. I probably can cut that little bit of string off a little bit shorter. Just bring in my plastic nippers. There we go. So we've now got the proper hook, and if I run this winch around, yeah, that's working really nicely. So that's the rear part of this helicopter all back up and together. Very happy with that. Now that tail section is all done, I can go ahead and start putting the cockpit back together. There's only a few parts to go in this. We have the main sort of chair, which just slips into these little brackets on the back here. You can see there's a couple of lips on the back of this, and they just slot down into that. This chair, I think, has been used on quite a few different Action Man vehicles, because I certainly recognise it from other ones. We then have this little control post. Now, I did mention at the start of this video there was a bit of damage on the front here. You can see that these little tabs, which are very similar to the one the chair hooks into, the tops of them have snapped off, but not really enough to stop this holding in place. So I probably could repair those again just with a bit of styrene. I could make some replacement parts, but it isn't really necessary. As you can see, I can slide this control piece in just like that, and it locks in place enough. I can't see any reason to sort of spend the time fixing that when it isn't really broken in the first place. It does hold in place quite nicely. So I'm going to leave that as is. Then we have the cockpit glass, and that should just hook in the top there, and then the front somehow clips in. I can't actually remember how these go in place. Maybe I'll have to put the front in first. Front in first, like that, and then that top section just clips in there. So as you can see, we're starting to get something that looks like a helicopter. It's looking more like it could fly now than it did when I first started with this. And that is where I'm going to leave this project for this video. There will be a part 2. I'm just waiting for some pieces to arrive that I've ordered, and then I can get on reconstructing the landing gear, which as you can see is going to be quite a big project. And I'm currently bidding on a replacement blade on eBay, so hopefully I will win that as well. And then we can get on and do the last pieces to this. But so far it's going really well. I wasn't quite sure how well I would get on in this video and how much I could actually repair, but as you can see, the whole of that tail section is pretty much done. We've just got to paint a few of the pieces that we've made, but overall it's really nice and sturdy, and certainly starting to look a lot more like a helicopter. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.